Presentation by Group 4, which consists of Jimmy, Lumbani, Joseph, and myself. One summer in 1998, a little bird was born. Years later, it stands to be one of the main leading telecommunications companies in Malawi. A public listed company on the Malawi Stock Exchange, Airtel Malawi falls under the East Africa segment of the segment in which Airtel as an umbrella operates in. Using financial ratios, we'll be carrying out a financial analysis of Airtel Malawi. To realize this, we'll be using extracts from the 2019 and 2020 financial statements, which can be found in the Airtel annual report of 2020. The analysis will help us better understand Airtel's financial behavior and help us give recommendations to Airtel Malawi, which they can adopt for their future, for the financial future. In understanding Airtel financial behavior, the profitability ratios will help us determine the ability of Airtel Malawi to create its earnings and to understand Airtel's ability to pay its short-term obligations, debt obligations. We'll be using the liquidity ratios. The efficiency ratios will help us understand whether Airtel Malawi is currently effectively managing its current assets and how it's managing its current liabilities. To help us better understand the financial cushion Airtel Malawi has, the gearing will help us assess the amount of leverage and financial stability that Airtel Malawi has. And to measure the overall profitability, we'll be using the shareholders' investment ratios. Moving on to the results.
Thank you, Victoria. Now I'll take you through the results after appraising financial behavior of Airtel Malawi. First, we'll look into profitability ratios, which are return on profit employed and net profit margin. Under ROS, we compare net profit before interest and tax over capital employed, and under net profit margin, we compare net profit to net sales. So under this, we realized that Malawi registered a decline in ROS in between 2019 to 2020 from 93.94% to 70.46%, which means that some of the capital employed was underutilized, and the net profit improved from 17.14 to 20.04, which means that they had an increase in the net profit from which they could retain profits and also pay out dividends. The next set of ratios are liquidity ratios. Here we look at current ratio and acid test ratio. Under current ratio, we compared current assets to current liabilities, while under acid test ratio, we compared current assets minus inventory, which is not readily convertible to cash, and current liabilities. Under this section, we also learned that Airtel had liquidity troubles, for its current ratios were 0.38 to 0.53 in between 2019 and 2020, which was way below the required ratio of 2 to 1. And also the acid test ratio was 0.38 for 2019 and 0.52 for 2020, which again was below the required threshold of 2 to 1. That set of ratios that we looked at were working capital turnover ratio and inventory turnover ratio. On the former, we compared total sales revenue to working capital, and working capital was derived from current inventory turnover ratio, compare total revenue to total inventory. Under this segment again, Airtel registered an adverse inventory efficiency ratio from 1,849 in 2019 to 421 in 2020, which is not which is not desirable. And under working capital ratios, it was all in negative for both years because the current assets were more than the current liabilities, which again is very adverse for a profit-making organization. So at this juncture, I'll hand you over to Jimmy for more analysis.
Thank you, Joseph. I'll take you through the following analysis, which is the debt or carrying ratio. This measures the debt capital employed by a company in relatively to the equity employed with the same company. So in this one, we used two ratios: interest cover ratio and debt to equity ratio. On interest cover ratio, we calculated through profit before interest divided by total interest, which in 2019 it was 8.89, and in 2020 it was 16.39. On the debt to equity ratio, we divided total debt of the company divided by total equity of the over Airtel, which gave us in 2019 it was 6.26, in 2020 it was 4.72. This what is it trying to tell us about Airtel? It registered a decline in debt to equity ratio from 6.26 to 4.72 times from 2019 to 2020. Interest cover ratio almost doubled from 2019 to 2020, from 8.9 to 16.39, which is a good development for the company as a going concern. Then we go to shareholder investment ratio. On this one, we used earnings per share ratio, which we calculated through earnings attributable to ordinary shareholders to weighted average number of ordinary shares. In 2019, it was 1.5 per share, and in 2020, it was 2.01 per share, which was an increase to the shareholders. This is what it is telling us about. Airtel showed an increase in the trend of earnings per share ratio from 1.45 to 2.01 from 2019 to 2020, representing 38.62 of growth, which will give encouragement to the investors to invest into this company as there is a high earning per share. Now, I hand over to my colleague Lumbani for recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. So having analyzed the financial performance of Airtel for 2019 and 2020, what recommendations did we come up for Airtel to improve its future financial performance? The first recommendation we had is that Airtel needs to invest much in innovation. This will help them to diversify their product portfolio. Secondly, we did recommend that Airtel should, make more strides in learning promotions for their different products, which most of them, as you have seen, are quite dormant on the product line. Thirdly, we came up with recommendations that Airtel need to lower their current liabilities. This will help them basically to improve their liquidity and meet their debt obligations. We also recommended that Airtel need to basically reduce on their stock, which basically cannot be converted into cash. We also recommended that Airtel need to increase on their equity financing than on debt financing. We also did recommend that Airtel need to increase on their sales revenue. This will help them basically to have more interest in cover their basically learning debts. We also did recommend that Airtel need to keep, at least at a minimum, in terms of their cost. This will help them to attain more profit, and in the process, basically, declare more profit. Now, moving to conclusion, after the whole financial analysis of Airtel 2019, 2020, what exactly are we concluding with? We have come to conclude that financial analysis is quite very crucial. It helps the management make informed decisions that basically translate them to make sound, informed decisions. We also conclude that, much as Airtel, the Airtel financials, they were steadily, improving in 2019 and 2020. Nevertheless, of the improvement, we did, also see that Airtel had quite an idle capital employed, which could have been used to generate more profit, which would translate to a good performance financially of the company. We also concluded that the entity Airtel Malawi need to improve on their working capital, which, as we have all seen, has been negative in both the years of 2019 and 2020. And lastly, we also concluded that management has a noble responsibility, to increase the shareholders' worth at the end of the day, and also increase the going concern of the entity, which is Airtel Malawi. At this juncture, we open the floor for questions on our presentation on Airtel Malawi. The floor is open.
Okay, Group 4, I have a question for you. What prompted the group to analyze Airtel PLC?
Victoria here, I'll take that question. So we chose Airtel because it met the criteria of the assessment. It's listed as a public listed company, and also it's their annual reports were readily available. Thank you. Any other questions for Group 4?
In the interest of time, asking again, do we have any questions for Group 4?
Yes, I have.
Yes, go ahead.
Was there someone else speaking?
Yeah, but you can proceed.
Okay. I also wanted to ask that from this analysis that you've given us, would you recommend shareholders to invest in Airtel Malawi?
Yeah, this is Joseph. Yes, would recommend people to invest in Airtel Malawi because going under the shareholders' investment returns, they are increasing. So it means it's worthwhile investing with Airtel Malawi because the capital injected therein will come with the rewards thereof.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, Joseph. Do we have any other question?
Yes, you mentioned about the gearing ratio. Can you go back to that slide?
Yes, go ahead, Crocus.
Okay, so on the debt or gearing ratio, can you just explain again what that means, what those numbers mean, and so that we understand what you're recommending, especially on the gearing itself?
Jimmy here. You mean the numbers for interest cover ratio and the debt equity ratio? That's what your question is?
Yes, you can explain both, but I was looking at the debt equity ratio more.
Okay, correct. On interest cover ratio, we measure how the company is able to pay the interest for the loans. So there's a profit before interest divided by total interest paid. So you have the option here, like in 2019, and the Airtel was able to pay 8.89 times according to the profit that was made. as we compare 28,432,02 against the interest of 3,199,700. So Airtel had a chance of paying it 8 times. Therefore, in 2020, it improved from, it doubled from 8.8 to 16.9. It means the interest cover ratio was good to Airtel now. So that's it all about it. That's how we compare it as a going concern entity. Have I answered your question?
Yes.
Anything else for group 4?
Do we have any question for group 4 in the interest of time? Okay, if there are no questions, I would like to thank you, everyone, for making the time to join our presentation. And yeah, we wish you all the best in the further assignments. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.